Jesus' prayer on the Mount of Olives, sorrow and surrender. 1. The background. The Mount of Olives, located just east of Jerusalem, is more than a geographical landmark. It is a place layered with centuries of spiritual and prophetic significance. In the Old Testament, King David wept as he fled across this mount during Absalom's rebellion, 2 Samuel 15:30. The mount's slopes are dotted with olive trees and overlook the city of Jerusalem, including the Temple Mount. By the time of Jesus, this mount had become not only a physical place of rest and passage, but a place of prayer and prophecy. Jesus had often visited it with his disciples, Luke 21:37, but on this particular night it became the setting for one of the most emotionally intense moments of his earthly life, the night before his crucifixion. 2. The setting of the story. After the Last Supper, Jesus and his disciples left the city and made their way toward the Mount of Olives, to a place known as Gethsemane, Matthew 26:36, Mark 14:32. The name Gethsemane means oil press, an appropriate metaphor for the crushing emotional and spiritual weight Jesus would endure there. The evening air was cool, and the Passover moon shone brightly over the olive trees. Jerusalem was still bustling with pilgrims for the feast, but the garden was secluded. The faint rustle of leaves and the chirp of night insects were the backdrop for what was about to unfold. 3. The emotional weight. Jesus knew what awaited him: betrayal, arrest, humiliation, torture, and death on a cross. More than physical pain, he faced the weight of taking upon himself the sins of the world. Matthew's Gospel records him telling his closest disciples, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." Matthew 26:38. This was not a casual sorrow. It was a crushing grief that pressed upon his mind and body. He withdrew with Peter, James, and John deeper into the garden, asking them to pray and remain awake with him. 4. The prayer begins. Luke's Gospel describes the scene with simplicity, yet profound depth. He withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down and prayed. "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." Luke 22:41-42. The cup refers to the suffering and divine judgment he was about to bear. In human weakness, he expressed the desire, if possible, for this suffering to pass. But in perfect obedience he surrendered, "Not my will, but yours be done." 5. Agony in the garden. Luke tells us that an angel from heaven appeared to strengthen him, Luke 22:43. Still, his anguish only deepened. His prayer became more fervent, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground, Luke 22:44. Medical science calls this rare condition hematidrosis, when extreme stress causes capillaries to burst, mixing blood with sweat. The intensity of his sorrow was beyond what words can describe. 6. The disciples sleep. Meanwhile, his disciples, though asked to keep watch, fell asleep. Luke says they were exhausted from sorrow, Luke 22:45. They too felt the weight of uncertainty and grief, but unlike Jesus, they could not remain vigilant. When he returned and found them sleeping, he asked, "Why are you sleeping? Get up and pray so that you will not fall into temptation." Luke 22:46. Even in his moment of greatest personal need, Jesus was concerned for their spiritual readiness. 7. The moment of surrender. This scene captures two truths about Jesus. His humanity, he genuinely felt fear, distress, and the longing for another way. His deity and obedience, despite the agony, he chose the Father's will, knowing it meant salvation for humanity. The surrender was not passive resignation. It was active obedience in the face of unimaginable cost. 8. Spiritual meaning for us. The prayer in Gethsemane offers powerful lessons. Prayer in trials. Like Jesus, we are called to bring our fears and struggles honestly to God. Surrender to God's will. True faith means aligning our will with God's, even when his plan leads through pain. Need for spiritual alertness. Jesus warned his disciples, and us, to watch and pray so we are not overcome by temptation. God's strengthening presence. The angel's appearance reminds us that God provides strength for the path he asks us to walk. 9. Historical and prophetic significance of the Mount of Olives. The Mount of Olives appears repeatedly in Scripture. In Zechariah 14:4, prophecy speaks of the Lord standing on the Mount of Olives in the end times. It was from this mount that Jesus ascended to heaven after his resurrection, Acts 1, 9-12. It was here that he wept over Jerusalem, Luke 19:41. This makes the Gethsemane moment even more profound. The very mount that will see his return was also the place of his greatest earthly submission. 10. Narrative reflection. Imagine standing there that night. The olive branches sway in the night breeze. The air smells faintly of crushed leaves and soil. The moonlight illuminates the sweat-drenched figure of Jesus, kneeling in the shadows. His voice is low but urgent. The stillness is occasionally broken by the sigh of a disciple shifting in sleep. You see the tension in his body, the way his fingers dig into the earth as if holding himself to his Father's will. You sense that the weight he carries is not just physical death, but the crushing load of humanity's sin. When he rises, his face is resolute. The surrender is complete. 11. The transition to arrest. Even as he speaks to his disciples, the torches of the approaching crowd begin to flicker in the distance. Judas leads them. The prayer is over. The path to the cross is set. Yet the victory was already won in the garden, because surrender to God's will is where true victory begins. 12. Why this moment matters. The Mount of Olives prayer is not just an event in history. It is a living testimony of how to face suffering with both honesty and obedience. It reminds us that faith is not the absence of fear, but the choice to trust God despite it. For Christians, Gethsemane is where redemption began to be sealed. The cross was the visible act, but the garden was the place of decision. God bless you.